Europe in 1914 was a continent on edge. The atmosphere was thick with tension and the air was filled with uncertainty. People could sense that something monumental was about to happen, but no one knew exactly what or when. The great powers were locked in a dangerous game of alliances and military build-up. Each nation was wary of the others, and the balance of power was delicate. Military parades showcased the might of armies, but behind the scenes, leaders were making secret pacts and preparing for the worst. Nationalism was on the rise, fueling tensions between nations. People were increasingly identifying with their nation-states, and nationalist leaders were stirring up fervor. This fervor often turned into hostility towards neighboring countries, making diplomatic resolutions more difficult. The empires of Austria-Hungary and Ottoman Turkey were crumbling while Germany and Russia were growing in power. The decline of these once mighty empires created a power vacuum, and ambitious nations were eager to fill it. This shift in power dynamics added another layer of complexity to the already volatile situation. Competition for colonies and resources added to the pressure. European powers were scrambling to expand their empires, often clashing in far-off lands. These colonial rivalries spilled over into European politics, further straining relations between nations. The world watched and waited, sensing that a storm was brewing. Diplomatic meetings were tense, and the slightest misstep could lead to disaster. The general public, though largely unaware of the intricate details, could feel the unease in the air. Germany, eager to assert its dominance, had been rapidly expanding its military. The nation was determined to become a major global power, and its aggressive policies reflected this ambition. This alarmed its neighbors, particularly France and Great Britain. Both nations had their own interests to protect and saw Germany's actions as a direct threat to their security and influence. Britain, with its vast empire, felt threatened by Germany's growing naval power. The British Navy was the cornerstone of its global dominance, and any challenge to its supremacy was taken very seriously. France still harbored resentment over its defeat in the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 to 1871. The loss had left deep scars, and the French were eager for an opportunity to reclaim their honor and territory. Adding to the volatile mix was a tangled web of alliances. These alliances were meant to provide security, but they also meant that any conflict could quickly draw in multiple nations. These agreements, often secret, obligated nations to defend each other in case of attack. This created a precarious situation where a single incident could trigger a chain reaction leading to widespread conflict. This meant that a minor conflict could quickly escalate into a major war. The interconnectedness of these alliances made the situation extremely fragile. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, in Sarajevo on June 28, 1914, provided the spark that ignited this powder keg. This single event set off a chain of reactions that would plunge Europe into one of the deadliest conflicts in history. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife, Sophie, by a Serbian nationalist, Gavrilo Princip, sent shockwaves through Europe. Austria-Hungary, determined to crush Serbian nationalism, issued an ultimatum with harsh demands. Serbia, backed by Russia, refused to accept all the terms. On July 28, 1914, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. The alliance system, like a series of tripwires, was activated. Russia, bound by treaty to protect Serbia, began to mobilize its army. Germany, allied with Austria-Hungary, viewed Russian mobilization as a threat. On August 1, 1914, Germany declared war on Russia. 2 days later, Germany declared war on France, Russia's ally. World War I had begun. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the immediate trigger of World War I, but the underlying causes ran much deeper. Imperialism, the quest for colonies and empires, had created rivalries and competition among European powers. Nationalism, with its emphasis on national glory and superiority, fueled tensions and made compromise difficult. Militarism, the glorification of military strength, led to an arms race, particularly between Germany and Great Britain. Each nation sought to outdo the other in terms of battleships, artillery and manpower. This arms race created a climate of fear and suspicion. Lastly, the complex web of alliances that entangled the European powers turned a regional conflict into a global war. Section 4. Clash of Titans. Germany's war plan, the Schlieffen Plan, called for a swift knockout blow against France. German armies would sweep through neutral Belgium, outflank French defences and capture Paris. However, the plan faltered. The Belgians resisted fiercely, buying valuable time for the French and British to mobilise their forces. The First Battle of the Marne, fought in September 1914, halted the German advance and ended any hope of a quick victory. The war on the Western Front settled into a bloody stalemate. Both sides dug in, creating a vast network of trenches that stretched for hundreds of miles. Trench warfare became the defining feature of the Western Front, characterized by horrific conditions, constant shelling, and futile assaults. Section 5. The World at War. While the Western Front became mired in trench warfare, with soldiers enduring unimaginable hardships in the muddy, rat-infested trenches, the war raged on other fronts, each with its own unique challenges and horrors. In the east, Germany and Austria-Hungary fought against Russia in brutal and often chaotic battles, with vast armies clashing across the expansive Eastern European plains. On the Italian front, Italy joined the Allied side, hoping to gain territory from Austria-Hungary. The mountainous terrain made fighting particularly grueling and deadly. The war also spread to the Middle East, where the Ottoman Empire sided with the Central Powers. Here, the conflict took on a different character, with desert warfare and long supply lines. The Gallipoli campaign, an ambitious Allied attempt to capture the Dardanelles Strait and knock the Ottoman Empire out of the war, ended in disaster with heavy casualties and a strategic failure. Despite being weakened by the conflict, the Ottoman Empire managed to hold on, defending its territory against the Allied forces. In 1917, the United States, angered by German submarine attacks on American ships and the infamous Zimmermann telegram, joined the war on the side of the Allies, bringing fresh troops and resources. The entry of the United States with its vast industrial might and fresh troops would prove decisive. American soldiers, known as doughboys, brought new energy to the weary Allied forces, tipping the balance in their favor. Section 6. The War's End. Despite the entry of the United States, the war dragged on for another year. In 1918, Germany launched a desperate series of offensives in the West, hoping to achieve victory before American troops arrived in force. The offensives initially gained ground, but they eventually stalled. The Allies, bolstered by American troops and resources, launched a counter-offensive that drove the Germans back. By the fall of 1918, Germany was on the verge of collapse. Its allies had been defeated or had surrendered. The German people, weary of war and suffering from food shortages, were in open revolt. On November 11, 1918, Germany signed the armistice, ending the fighting. World War I was over. Section 7. A Flawed Peace. The Paris Peace Conference, convened in 1919, was tasked with creating a lasting peace. Leaders from around the world gathered with the hope of preventing another devastating conflict. However, the conference was marked by bitterness and recrimination. The delegates often found themselves at odds, struggling to reconcile their differing national interests and historical grievances. The Treaty of Versailles imposed on Germany was harsh and punitive. It was designed to ensure that Germany would never again be a threat to European stability. It blamed Germany for the war and imposed heavy reparations payments. These payments were intended to cripple the German economy and prevent any future military buildup. Germany was stripped of territory, its military was severely restricted, and it was forced to accept sole responsibility for the war. The loss of territory included key industrial regions, further weakening Germany's economic position. The treaty, while satisfying the victor's desire for revenge, sowed the seeds of future conflict. The harsh terms created a deep sense of injustice and resentment among the German people. Germany, humiliated and economically crippled, would soon seek to overturn the terms of the treaty. The economic hardship and national humiliation fueled political extremism and unrest. World War I left a legacy of death, destruction, and political instability. The physical and psychological scars of the war were felt across Europe, affecting millions of lives. The war shattered empires, redrew the map of Europe, and ushered in an era of uncertainty. New nations emerged, while old ones struggled to adapt to the new geopolitical landscape. The Treaty of Versailles, far from creating a lasting peace, laid the groundwork for World War II. The unresolved issues and lingering resentments would eventually lead to another, even more devastating conflict.